Hello, good evening. Welcome Pete Bampton again for this fourth in the series of the Temple Talks, Shakti and Shiva, can't speak, Shiva and Shakti. And welcome to those who've joined us live. Tonight we're going to cover agreement making and how this can support us in our intimate relationships to surrender and be present to each other in new ways. And we're going to start this evening with a short meditation, about 5 minutes long. This comes from the practice, the School of Consent, and the practices that have been popularized by Betty Martin, Dr. Betty Martin, and it helps us arrive in our bodies. And it sounds perhaps to some too simple to be of any value, but I really encourage you to follow this. So if you're watching the recording, I invite you to go get an object from around your house. It can be absolutely anything, organic, metal, plastic, whatever, and to bring a sense of curiosity and beginner's mind to this practice. It's about 5 minutes long. So I invite you to get comfortable. It's really good and important in this meditation to support the back. And the reason for this is that it relaxes the nervous system and takes us out of doing and more into receiving. When the trunk of the body is forwards and engaged and not supported, we tend to be in more of a sympathetic nervous system state. So we want to receive information from this object. You'll also need a cushion. I didn't mention that to those who are present on the call. So please grab a cushion if you've not got one, or a blanket folded on your lap, or something to put your object on. And let's place our object on our lap on this cushion. Relax the shoulders. Feel the support, the back support, if you can get some back support, leaning on the wall, if you don't have a chair, or against something. And just noticing the nervous system perhaps settling into this support. And I invite you to bring your awareness to, if you can just leave the object on the cushion, first just bringing your awareness to the surfaces of your palms, of your hands, and being aware of any sensation there, maybe of the air circulating around the hands that might be different from your arms if they're covered with clothes. Noticing any temperature in the hands. And the focus of this meditation is to wake up the body, specifically the hands. It's called waking up the hands. And we're waking it up in relationship to this object. So the object is the subject of the meditation. And we're going for the sensations that we're noticing in our hands in a new way, with more attention, more awareness and focus. So I invite you now to pick up your object. And the first part of this practice is to just gather information. So how does it move? Is it rough or smooth? Does it have different properties? What does it weigh? And we can let the mind give it a name, but not attached to what it is. Just let the mind know, oh, this is my so-and-so object. When we do this in groups, we keep our eyes closed and then pass another object to our partner next to us in a circle. And then we don't know what the object is. And the mind might want to open the eyes and see. So as you feel your object, now bringing that curiosity like a child. So we know what it's called. What is this object? So let's let that naming process go. And now go to the experience of the object. And I invite you to slow the touch down by half. And notice as I go half speed, is the noticing increasing? Is the information that my hands can experience going up? And I invite you to go even slower, going half the speed that you just were, which was already half the first speed. Going really slow now. Noticing what changes under your sensory nerves in the skin. And once again, slowing down again by half. I invite you to experiment with taking the object in one hand, resting the other hand on the cushion or blanket, and using one hand to tickle or massage the other hand with the object. Exploring different sides of the hand, the back of the hand, in between the fingers, the webbing, the palm of the hand. I invite you to notice if there's anything pleasant about your exploration right now. Anything that might bring a kind of subtle smile, or a curiosity, or a comfort. Could be any kind of quality that you're noticing that you might want to experience a bit more of. And how would the hands follow that pleasant feeling, whatever it might be, if it's there? And could we be so bold as to say that there could be the possibility of pleasure? And with full permission, how would it be to follow this pleasure in this moment with your hands, with this object? Where would that take you? And I invite you to notice your breath. Are you breathing? Has your breath slowed, or are you holding your breath? I invite you to breathe. And as you perhaps follow something that feels pleasant or even pleasurable, I invite you to notice how the breath can get involved with that, support that. Even help to spread and carry that sensation through the body. And this sensation ride on the breath. And if it can, where does it travel to? Can you be with this sensation, and can the breath support you to feel it in more of your body than just your hands? I invite you to speak out some qualities of your object that you're feeling under your hands right now. What are you noticing as you feel up this object?
Melting.
Melting. And what qualities can you feel in your object? Inviting you now to place your object in one hand and then stroke or explore the object. So it's like lay passive in one hand, and then the other hand exploring different surfaces of your side, back, front of the hand over the object, building a different kind of relationship to it than massaging one hand with the object held in the other hand, if that makes sense. And then I invite you to slowly bring this touch meditation, sensory meditation exploration, slowly to a close, bringing your hands into stillness and leaving the object on the pillow and just turning your palms up either side of the object if you've got space, and just noticing now any echo of sensation in the hands through these sensory nerves that have been stimulated and woken up in the hands. And just noticing any change or any newness as you tune into the state of your hands right now, and just inviting you to share any words that come close to describing the sensation in your hands right now.
Tingling.
Alive.
Echo.
Relaxation.
What was that, JP?
Relaxation.
Relaxation. Melting, tingling, alive, echo, relaxation. And if you widen your perception, widen it out to the whole body. When we invited this noticing to carry and ride on the breath around the body, are there any words that come close to describing how building that relationship with the breath and the rest of the body, any words that come close to describing that? Or is it part of this melting, tingling, alive, echo, relaxation?
Slow.
Slow.
Spinning and heart beating.
Being and heart beating.
Spinning.
Spinning, sorry, struggling to hear. Spinning and heart beating. So inviting you to come back to the room and to the space. Let's slowly feel and wiggle our toes. Maybe push down into the ground. Feel that sense of support and connection. And then slowly blinking the eyes open. Quarter, half, 3/4, and fully open, but with soft eyes, perhaps, with no effort, just receiving like you were receiving the information from the object. Just now receiving the light from the screen, receiving each other in this call, receiving the voice, any sounds around you and my voice. And we invite ourselves into an effortless receptivity of being open. So it's 15th of February 2024. And I've got a little tickly cough, sorry. So the exploration tonight is an invitation to relating and to the powerful importance of containers and clarity as a support to really letting go and surrendering into presence. So we'll talk briefly about that and then see if we can maybe develop some practice this evening or a discussion. And we'll hear from Pete on his perspective on this in intimate relationships. And we'd love to also hear from those who are here live in the call as a source of learning for us all on our shared experiences, both as practitioners perhaps and human beings. Would anybody like to share briefly how that waking up the hands with the object meditation was for you? Have you done it before, either of you?
Yeah, I'd done something similar. It felt familiar. I think I've done something similar, but I'd forgotten just the power of the slowness and just like the simplicity of a simple object with inanimate object like a piece of paper, and the capacity for eros that exists in the moment that just lays totally dormant. And yeah, it was quite surprising to feel, wow, the capacity for good sense to bring that pleasure and good sensation into the body in such a simple way.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is the first time I've done this, Julian, and what struck me about it is well, just the whole spectrum of sensitivity in the hands and how varied it is, you know, depending on different areas. I noticed particularly the palm. So that there's according to the Indian tradition, there's a chakra in the palm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely much more sensitive and quite exquisite to just stay with sensation. And yeah, just bring it. Just helps to see that there's what we could just call sensation, and then there's awareness. Degree of awareness we're bringing to whatever sensation is arising, and of course, usually to whatever degree, our awareness might be either not completely one with or immersed in the sensation.
Yeah.
In other words, there's a sense of me or as someone who's feeling or perceiving, or one might be just somewhere else. You know, one might be distracted by something or have some kind of agenda. So you're not actually wanting to get to a more intense, pleasurable sensation. So you actually miss the depth and exquisiteness of what one's experiencing now. So yeah, it's a good exercise to show that there's the whole spectrum of sensation that we might not ordinarily be aware of. And then there's the degree to which we allow ourselves to merge with that.
Yeah. As you've shared there, Pete, it reminds me of a teaching tool as part of this same practice of waking up our somatic sense, which is a triangle, which I don't think is, anyway, part of the core teachings of this, but you've reminded me. And it was a triangle of pleasure. And on the three corners of the triangle, one is context and meaning, and it's put at the top. On the other corner of the triad is sensation. And some people have damage to their nerves. So there are things that interrupt sensation. One of them is shame, because if I feel shame for the pleasure sensations in my hands, and I think that it's wrong to feel pleasure, like Emma said, there's this latent ever present in most of us who've got feeling in most of our body, potential for pleasure in the body, but do we shut it down, and how and why? So trauma can be a thing. Shame, big interruption to pleasure. So that's why it's really powerful for people to work with shame feelings that they have. Injury can interrupt our sensation, as obviously if we've damaged our hands or our skin or our nerves. So we can look at these different parts and see, why is there an interruption to pleasure in the person? Is it their belief around pleasure's innately sinful? So we can support these different corners. The other corner is, as Pete said, awareness. Do you give yourself permission to bring your finest attuned quality attention and awareness? And often, you know, whatever age we all are, we might have done this as a child, with our mouth, you know, putting objects in our mouth. It's deeply pleasurable and erotic, but it's not sexual as a child, because we've not got that meaning context part yet. So yeah, sensation, meaning and context, and awareness, or focus of awareness, make up this pyramid of pleasure or sensation. The other thing, before we hit record tonight, I was sharing about a course that Steve Haynes has shared with me on my old learning platform, which I think we called Pain is Really Strange. And he wrote 3 books. You can get them, they're not expensive, and they're cartoon books for adults. And he's got Pain is Really Strange, Trauma is Really Strange, and a third one, I think. And he goes into the science of pain and sensation, and that we used to think that there were receptors that were receiving signals and reporting there is pain in the body. And what he reports, and the science discovered, is that these nociceptors, or I don't know if I've pronounced it right, but it's something like that, are perceiving pain, and we could say they're creating pain. And I asked him in the course, what about pleasure? And he kind of lit up and said, that's for another conversation. But I found that very interesting, that, and it's not helpful or compassionate to tell people who are in pain that they're making it up. But if we look at that triangle, meaning and context, so he illustrates the point like this. There was a builder who reported headaches, and he went to his doctor, and they recommended he had an x-ray because they couldn't discover the source of his headaches. So he went to the hospital and they did an x-ray of his head, and they literally found, you know, one of those giant industrial nails. He'd been firing a nail gun, and one had ricocheted off somewhere, off a wall, and lodged itself right up here, and it had avoided all major organs and glands, and he wasn't feeling any pain. He was oblivious of it. And in the course and in the book, and in his scientific references, they've got the x-ray of this man, you know, that's got this massive nail embedded up here somewhere. And he wasn't feeling any pain. So that proves the point of the pyramid and triangle, where meaning and context, his brain had not been told that he has this massive nail here. Took him weeks to discover a headache, and they couldn't believe it. They'd found this nail embedded up here somewhere. Then another building accident proves the opposite. So someone stood, and we've all probably heard stories like this. Someone in steel toe-capped boots stood on a nail, and it went right through his boot and came out the top. And the guy was in excruciating pain, screaming, collapsed on the floor, got rushed into hospital. They took off his boot, and it had gone between his toes. It hadn't pierced his skin. So those 2 examples prove the meaning, context, meaning-making perception of pain, the power of that. So I think they illustrate really well how meaning and context can completely change our perception and therefore our experience. So when we're slowing down, and we do this in workshops with people, often as they slow down, there might be, we're dialing up the other point of the pyramid, we're dialing up the awareness, aren't we? We're saying, oh, let's turn up the volume on that sensation right there. What's that like to bring more awareness? Can I bring the fullness of my awareness? That's a question I sometimes ask. Can you bring the fullness of your intention, or can you bring, what would it be like to bring your finest attuned attention to the surfaces of your hands and feel this object right now? And what would you notice? So meaning and context also, if our partner or our lover was tickling us with this object, how would that change the touch than when it's us? And if we explore different parts of the body, does that mean something different to us? If we take it around our chest, or different around the ear or erogenous zones. So we have our physical sensation, we have the meaning and context. Is it us doing it? Is somebody watching? Am I like giving a show of how much pleasure I'm in for my partner or something? Or is it performative, or is it authentic? And am I really with my experience? And how much attention and awareness can I bring to what I'm doing? And if we're in a partnered relationship, what would it be? And on the retreat, and in the retreats I'm sharing this year, I'm going to share something that Emma experienced on the last course in December about feeling and following. So how would it be to bring to our partnered lovemaking, and not even romantic, just our friends or our grandma, to bring a level of touch and noticing where we give the space for them to feel fully received. Receive your partner. You're not doing to them, you're receiving them. And how much we long for that in this human experience. We crave to be seen, to be witnessed, to be held, to be not adjudged, to be not fixed. And this is a quality of touch that I've become really inspired to share with touch professionals, but everyday people, because the more touch that we can share like that, the more intimacy we can bring to lots of relationships. You know, like a grandmother in a in her home or on a bus, we can hold the hands with this quality of touch, which is all about noticing and less about doing, and more about being and less about doing. So I'm really inspired to explore that on our retreat. And then we could talk about the topic tonight around agreements and containers. So we do a practice again from the Wheel of Consent after waking up the hands, which you've just done, and we'd partner up and ask. So if I'm working with Pete, I'd say, Pete, could I feel your hands for about 30 seconds to a minute? And then I bring the same kind of fine-tuned attention that I have with this object, with permission from Pete, to feel his hands for my exploration. So the Wheel of Consent takes apart it's a practice. It's not, you're not supposed to live your life by this. It's a practice to bring awareness. So I would be touching Pete for my pleasure or for my inquiry, but he has to be fully willing in the consent agreement to allow that. And if he feels, I'm no longer okay with this touch from Julian, he can say it's enough, or he can take his hands away. So consent in the Wheel of Consent is moment to moment and co-created. So we always have the freedom to change our mind, because in the old model of consent, it's quite transactional. Pete, can I feel your hands? Yeah. So I start feeling his hands. Well, he agreed. So I can keep feeling his hands. And it doesn't often include the opportunity for me to revise that felt sense of, on my side, is this still what I want? Or do I want to feel his shirt now? Can I feel the buttons on your shirt? And that might be a no. So, and the wheel takes apart the doing and the who's it for. So imagine then Pete goes after that, I really liked the way you were touching my hands. Are you sure it was for you? Because it felt really good. This is often what people say in the workshop. They say, oh my God, that touch was amazing. And it's because we don't often bring that presence that we've just brought to that object. And when it's not the object anymore, it's a real person, then Pete's feelings, whether he wants that touch or not, all comes into it, and it becomes very important. And we can experience that when Pete grants access, wow, he's giving me his body, okay, just his hand, but he's granting me access for me to explore and inquire what it's like to touch his hand. And when I see that in workshops, the amount of reverence and care, you don't see people grabbing at people and like, ooh, you might do in some kind of fun exploration of it. But what I tend to see is people slowing down and waking up the hands and touching in such a slow way. It looks like reverent worship. And it breaks open both the heart of the one doing and the one allowing. So this is take, allow dynamic. Within the wheel, there's 4 human experiences, and we can see, what's my relationship to taking? Am I tentative and, oh, is he liking this? Is this okay? Or am I able to really relax in and, like the object on your pillow, just really absorb the sensation, explore his fingers, the warmth, and feel full permission to take, trusting that Pete has his limits and boundaries covered. He'll tell me if it gets icky or it's too much or I'm squeezing too hard. So as the taker, if Pete said, oh, I don't want any pinching, and I don't want you to go above the wrist. On this practice, we don't really go above the wrist anyway, but I need to be the guardian of his limits. So we can translate this into relationships. If we're in relationship and they say, I would love to do X, Y, and Z, but I do not want you to do F, whatever it is in the alphabet, something that along that trajectory might include a little bit of this, and I don't want that. So if we're taking and worshipping our partner in terms of their allowing, we're drinking that in, be it physical intimacy or other intimacy. As the taker, you need to respect and honor sovereign, their, as sovereign choice, their limits and boundaries. So these are powerful practices that seem very simple, just touching each other's hands, but these 4 experiences of life are shown, and our easeful embodiment or dis-ease with these human states of emotion, vulnerability, truth, and authentic embodiment revealed. So the other way that we can flip that is if I'm sat with Pete and I now say, Pete, okay, if I was to massage your hands, touch your hands for you, what kind of quality of touch would you like? And he might say, oh, really firm, mate, just squeeze my fingers. Or he might say tickle, or I'm interested to see what it would be like to do very light, slow touch. So whatever Pete has an idea of touch that he wants, I try and get that right and then I'm like the practitioner and I'm giving a massage and the touch is for him. But what you'll notice in me describing those 2 things is both times I'm doing. First I'm doing and it's for me, I'm taking. But then if somebody's watching what's happening, oh, Julian's still doing that thing. No, what's changed is the context and the meaning. Now it's for Pete. So we've got to get it right for Pete. So I hope if you're listening to that, that's very clear. When you feel it in your body, it's super clear who it's for. If you've ever received a massage or gone to like a medical checkup where it's kind of for you because they're touching you to see if there's anything wrong with your body or whatever, but they need to get this bit of information. The touch can be, I'm not being ungrateful to the medical profession, but often they've got limited time and they're touching you to find out, are there any lumps or bumps or whatever they're checking out? Whereas if I'm touching and it's for me, the doctor's not going to touch you and it's for their pleasure. You know, they've got a code of ethics and conduct that will hardly ever happen as long as they're adhering to their code of ethics. So it's very rare that we touch and have an agreement around that touch. We've said the pyramid of the agreement, context, and meaning really matters. So if your doctor touched you in a certain place on your body, even with a very similar touch, maybe a little strokey touch, because he's trying to find out if you've got sensation in part of your back. Maybe you suspect neurological damage, but then you go home and your partner touched the same part of your body with the same kind of slow touch. Ooh, now it's really sensual and lovely. And then you touch yourself like that. Maybe you're a bit ashamed. You're on your own, you're touching yourself in this part of your body, and there's some shame. The perception of the touch in those three cases will be very different. Would you agree? Yeah. So I found that fascinating. I first got introduced to that 2015. And I saw that one thing that I saw was what Emma shared, is that, wow, there's a latent potential for Eros. In that first workshop, I touched a glasses case, and it was a similar sensation, like fake leather. It felt a bit like skin, and it was a similar shape to some part of my body that was, if it was excited. Oh my God, I got so aroused. I was so shocked. I was like, my God, I'm just touching a glasses case. It was like a cylindrical glasses case. And I was like, that's like my lingam. Oh my God. And I suddenly was really aroused and really shocked and confused that I could be slowing down and touching a glasses case. And it was like touching my own body in the associative muscle memory of my hands, you know. And I was blown away. I was like, wow. Because I judged it. I got a degree in massage. I was like, you know, this is basic. I don't need to do this. This is stupid, actually. I thought it was a bit stupid, but it was amazing. So if we take that little example making and let it go for a moment, and then imagine in our relationships. So I was talking to Pete earlier today, and I'd like to bring the analogy in the call. We were going to try and work it into the e-flyer, but it was too long and wordy. But if you imagine the ground and a well, and the wall is the container, the boundary between the soil and the subterranean particles and the water, which from the water table below might be really drinkable and crystal clear and beautiful, like spring water. And if we didn't have this container, the water would be all mushed in with the soil, and we wouldn't be able to extract the water and drink it and get the value from the water. So in the example of playing the game with the hands, we have a clear container. When we do this in the workshop and on the retreat, we will say the touch will not go beyond the wrist. So there'll be no removing of clothes. So we'll set some container agreements. If you're in a workshop and it's not been set, a container's not been set, you might be sat there thinking, oh, what's going to happen next? Am I going to be touched? Is he going to want to touch me somewhere else? All these distractions of the mind can creep in. But the clearer the container, okay, we're working on the hands and you're invited. So everything's an invitation. You don't even have to do the practice. You can sit and watch. That's participation too, because you're learning through observing. So when you realize that you really have a choice, and that is the main thing, the choice is more important than the touch, then it starts to change everything again. And you realize you have choices. And these practices can nourish and resource us in our wider life, because we can start to bring more awareness and more felt sense choice to all our decisions in our relationships and our life. Blew me away. So we come into a practice. I partner with Pete. I'm like, would you be willing for me to feel up your hands for this exercise? Can I touch your hands for my pleasure for 1 minute? And then Pete feels in his body, and if he's not sure, he might need more information, or not right now, you know. So what's going on? He doesn't have to. I can find another partner, or I just observe. So it becomes really important not to go along with things just because we're on a retreat or a workshop. So we will not, we will support full authenticity of choice rather than going along with. But if Pete says, yeah, sure, let's do it, then he's allowing me access to his body, and I'm stepping into that. I'm invited then to fully step into the taking role and to feel his hands for my curiosity, for my learning, for my pleasure, for my comfort. There might be different qualities of that touch. And again, if I then practice with Emma, it's a different person, the meaning and context is different. Emma's studied with me, Pete's not, Pete's older, Pete's a guy. So there's some contextual change that happens when we switch partner. and we'll get that experience of how does the meaning and the context change when I work with different people. And what this often opens up is, wow, sensation and pleasure is possible with anyone, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of attraction or sexual preference. It's not about sex, it's about noticing, slowing down. And you've just found, I hope, maybe, that there was pleasure to be had with this inanimate object. So the living, breathing, soft animal body of another human being, in a way, if you can't access pleasure there, then there's something interrupting. It's not an erotic, sensual, sexual pleasure that you need to be taking, but skin feels good. Young skin feels good, old skin feels good. We have, as Emma shared, the potential to feel pleasure perhaps in any moment if we just drop into our sensual self, our noticing, receptive self. So that's some of the physical exercises and just some of the examples of the relationships between who's doing and who's it for. And typically we think there's a giver and a receiver, and the giver is doing, and they do something for us, and we're receiving, and we're passive usually. So if you go to a hairdresser, this is a good example. You sit down, you pay them the money, and they cut your hair. Okay, so that's a transactional. They're going to cut the hair. It's for me. They do the doing. But if Pete says, I'm renting this house, it's got beautiful fruit trees, and I'm going to India in the summer, and it would be a shame, or the autumn, and it'd be a shame if all these oranges go to waste. If you want to come and harvest the tree, bring a big truck, because there's loads of oranges, help yourself. So Pete's offered access, like to his hands, but this time it's to his orange trees, but he's not there. So I've got to drive there with my truck and pick up all the oranges. So I'm doing, but it's for me. And that's a different kind of transaction than I'm doing, and it's for you. So this model of consent pulls apart and question these two things: who's doing and who's it for. And if someone's touching someone else, it may not be for the one who's being touched. As we've said in the example of I'm touching for my pleasure, I might want to touch my partner's face or caress her hair, and the agreement changes everything. Who's that for? She might say, can you stroke my hair? She likes me to stroke her hair every night to go to sleep. So that's for her. But sometimes I will touch her hair oftentimes and really get into enjoying the roots of the hair as they join the head, the smell, the sensation. Then I'm waking up way more my sensory nerves and my presence, and I can make it about me, about also enjoying that touch of her hair, and not see it as a chore, like, oh, she wants me to tickle her hair again to go to sleep. Oh, it's going to be 20 minutes until she goes to sleep. I can make it into something really fun and sensual, and your partner will almost certainly enjoy that touch more than if you're doing it for them, especially if it feels like a chore. So I just want to now just back up and zoom out. In our relationships, if we have clearer agreements around something, if Pete as a friend says, oh, Jules, do you like swimming? And I go, yeah, I love swimming. I love wild swimming. And he says, oh, well, let's go on a trip. Let's go and swim somewhere in natural water here in Portugal. And I might say, well, I like lakes and waterfalls. I like the sea too. But imagine that I'm like scared of the sea because I had a bad experience in the sea. So my limit might be, yeah, wild water, fresh water, but I don't want to go in the sea. So there's a limit. So then Pete's like, okay, well, I know this lake. It's not far from here. How about we go there? And I go, oh, cool. Yeah, let's do that. So I've set a limit. My limit is I want still water and not wavy ocean water. And then we get there and he's like, oh, I didn't bring my swimming trunks. Are you right to go in naked? And I go, oh, no, but I'm okay if you do. So I set another limit. I'm going to leave my boxer shorts on, so, but once we've got clear, then, okay, we've arrived at the lake. He's going to wear this. I'm going to wear that. We're wearing what we want to wear. And then there might be some other things that we need to negotiate, like, I don't know, other details of it. But once they're set and we've got a clear agreement and container, we can settle and really enjoy the experience, because I've said what my limits are, and I've made a request for a preference, And Pete's like gauged, well, yeah, I still like swimming in lakes. That's fine for me. I don't need to go to the ocean. Cool. So we're both explored what we truly want. We've expressed them. We've come to some agreements around them. Then we can both enjoy the experience. We can really be fully present as friends and enjoy being in the water and immerse ourselves, knowing that that was a very simplistic example. You know, this can be your whole relationship agreements. Are we in an open relationship? Are we monogamous? All these kind of important discussions to have. We can feel our way into authentic agreements, and therefore on a micro level, just touching the hands, or on a relationship level, when we're talking about limits and boundaries to our partnered intimacy, my proposal here tonight is that if we get clear and we name what we're noticing, where is their shame, where is their fear? Can I just communicate that I'm scared of the ocean, and without fear of judgment from Pete? And he says, cool, man, let's go to a lake then. No problem. You know, or
so am I.
oh, okay. Or I could be carrying it and be going in the car with Pete to the ocean. And maybe he, I'm not saying Pete would do this, but you know, a bromance or some bros are like, oh, I don't want to let him know that I'm also scared of the ocean. We might both go to the ocean because Pete doesn't want to confess that he's scared, and I don't want to confess that I'm scared. And we both go to the ocean scared, and we haven't been honest enough to say that we both don't like to be in the ocean. This happens all the time. And then when I realized that, I was like, it just figure came to me. I was like, I reckon 83% of human activity is a waste. And how sad, because imagine you were scared to say, I'm scared of the ocean, and I was scared to admit it. We might both go to the ocean and have a whole day where we're like paddling in the shallows because we're scared of the waves. But loads of human relationship and relating is wasted on not getting to the clarity of a container. And then if we're clear and we're both in, maybe we get to the lake and Pete goes, I'm glad you chose the lake, man, because I don't like going to the sea. And I go, really? Wow. And then we have a really nice time in the lake. So that's, for me, how we can correlate a simple practice of waking up the hands, move into a simple practice of working with the hands and each other in two of those experiences. In the wheel, it's serve, accept, and take, allow. But these things become super clear when you feel them in the body. Hopefully my explanation of them was clear, but when you feel it in the body, you know if this touch is for you or if it's the other person. And a lot of what we've seen in the Me Too movement throughout the world can be sometimes this perception of touch or sexual activity not being for me, and that I'm being taken from. And the wheel has its shadows. So the shadow of taking is stealing, you know, groping, raping. That's non-consensual taking, is stealing. And if we're in intimacy with someone and the touch starts to feel not good, then our nervous system says, this is not for me. She or he is touching me. I don't like this. I don't want this. And we perceive it as stealing, groping, raping. And this is where countries go into other countries and take resources and hurt people. So the shadow of taking with integrity is stealing, groping, raping, and war, and pillaging and abuse. So these have wider ramifications for geopolitics, you know, international relations. And when we learn to really respect the other's limits and boundaries and wishes and sovereignty as a choice-making human being, collection of human beings or nation, I think we would see more peace in the world if more people did this, did our retreat, Pete, basically. Yeah. So I'd like to open it up to Pete and the others that are here live, JP and Emma. We're a small group tonight. And yeah, I'm really passionate about this topic and how embodiment practices can show us where we can round out our humanness, become more authentic, have the courage to speak our truth, and see the power in that vulnerability and improve our relationships. Yeah. So over to you, Pete, or others for questions or sharing their experience.
Well, thank you for that. That was really, really
Yeah,
interesting.
go ahead, Pete.
I'm glad I had a little sleep. I was so tired, Emma. I said to Pete, I need to go and lie down because I've only come from Ireland. We were sharing some of these themes in a touch massage training, but I'm really excited to bring them to the Shiva Shakti retreat and look at them through the lens of coupled relationships and intimacy, because not many touch professionals do this, not enough. This became the foundation of sexological bodywork. For many of the trainings around the world, this is absolute foundational practice. And for example, one of the hilarious questions, I did a webinar with Betty Martin, the originator of these practices, and we entitled it, Why You Never Ask Your Client for Permission to Touch Their Body. And that seems like an off proposal, doesn't it? Of course you should ask permission to touch their body. But if you're asking permission, who does that suggest the touch is for?
Right.
Obviously me. So in sexological bodywork, one of my friends, Joe, he said, Julian, when I started to study, he said, you never ever give someone, so there's limits and boundaries from the clinician, from the practitioner side, and I named them on another webinar. In sexological bodywork, touch is always one way, unless you're doing these hand practices that we just discussed. Erotic touch, genital touch, is only ever one way. And it's with the clear purpose, because it's for the education, you could say in a spiritual sense, the awakening, healing, and empowerment of the individual. So you would never be doing some kind of jazzy erotic massage on them that they're not sure what's going to happen. That would not happen. We wear gloves. I very rarely do genital touch work, but if I do, it's got a clear reason. The person might say, I've got no sensation in my genitals. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't want to go to a doctor. I heard that mapping, for example, which is slow, mindful touch of any part of the body, might be good for me to check out my sensations in my genitals. Okay, so what's the goal? Is to map sensation and see whether they are healthily sensate in their genitals. So there's a clear reason of why we're doing it. Emma witnessed some of this, I think, in their practice. And it's very beautiful to see somebody getting what they need from that kind of touch exchange. But I wouldn't ask permission, okay, can I touch your genitals now? No. Okay, so what would you like to map? Where are you curious about? Where do you feel there's a lack of sensation? Okay, here and here. Okay, would you like me to begin? How would you like to receive that touch? It's about them being in choice, So that changed for me. I'd never done genital work. I was always, I did a degree in body work, but we never touched genitals, not at all. But when I was trained 20 years ago, they said, watch your language. As the client comes in and you say, okay, could you get undressed for me, down to the underwear? Could you sit up on the couch for me? And it's the for me bit. And my lecturers were like, careful. I'm not saying that I was going around saying for me, but they were saying, be careful of this kind of languaging where we're saying, okay, just pop your shirt off for me. Okay, do this for me. And it's a similar thing. We don't ask permission because in the work, we're supporting and creating a container of choice like we did with the hand. Pete, can I feel your hands? That's for me. But very rarely in a therapeutic context or a session context should we be asking things that for us. It's not about us. We might, if we say, could you move your leg for me? I might be on the table, massage table, and they might have their legs over my legs because we're doing something with the belly or something, and I might be getting uncomfortable. Yeah, then, okay, could you move your leg because my leg's going dead and I need to move? In those situations where you're adjusting for your own comfort, yeah. But touch, very interesting. So, but I think there's a lot to be shared from this practitioner world into the world of intimacy. And it can be very liberating to do these practices. For example, I mentioned on one of the other calls that one of my clients wanted to get into the darker eros of his masculine and taking because his partner wanted him to take and ravage her. And we used this same example with the hands, but I invited and mentioned this on the other call that I said, well, invite her into this if you want. Go home, say, would you like me to touch and take from your body? You could ask, could you be in a certain position, or take up a position that you would like me to touch you, whatever that is. They get on the sofa or into bed and position themselves how they want or how you want. And then you can ask, or you can have a container of an agreement, which is take freely. I'll tell you if I'm not comfortable with something. Your hands can go anywhere, everywhere. I don't want to be slapped, pinched, or, they can set some limits, and then you get a clear container and you explore, and you trust in a romantic relationship that you've got the respect, mutual respect. I would hope that if something's no longer feeling good, your partner can feed that back, and the container can stay clean, safe, and explorative. So yeah, for these reasons that I've shared, I think, more practitioners, I really believe, since I learned this in 2015, I was passionate about more practitioners learning this, because so many times people learn a technique and they're doing it to people. And I hosted Betty in Lisbon in 2019, and I said, well, that kind of touch is like dewy touch. The hands are busy doing stuff and techniques, and you can end up feeling pushed and prodded. And what you might have wanted is full presence, listening hands, which is what I'm passionate about sharing to massage practitioners, which I've been doing and teaching for a few years, 20 years, but more recently consciously trying to teach this kind of touch. And then couples and friends, and to share a real presence of touch, connecting to the wellness, connecting to the life force in the other person, and being present to it. So yeah, I'm going on again, but yeah, Emma, do you want to share about that feel and follow? I've bought feelandfollow.com by the way. Yeah, because we used it a lot on this training as well, and Howard was getting quite excited. He was like, feel and follow. And then we were like, where should we go to eat? Feel and follow. Like, well, what do you feel like eating? And then we follow it, and we'll get an agreement together, and we'll go and eat the food that we want to eat. This is like, you can yeah, live a more intuitive and body felt authentic truth. And I also don't believe that that's not spiritual. There's this idea that, oh, well, you're just following the desires of the body. But if you come more and more into a natural, easeful alignment with your truth in all dimensions of your being, denying what the body wants heightens the drama between thinking and being. So the more that I've learnt through these wheel practices and the work of Philip Shepherd, his radical wholeness, to be in more easeful alignment, the more open and free I feel in my system, the more down-regulated and resourced I feel, the more I live a much happier, fulfilled life. And getting these dynamics around relational agreements is deeply liberating. I would say you create less negative karma, if you're talking about karma and suffering, because you naturally want to serve life, and you learn how to nourish yourself with life, with sunsets, with smells. You open your senses to be nourished by the beautiful smell of grass and trees, and I became much more receptive to all of that, and therefore life becomes sensual and joyous, and you can feel the temperature of water on your skin like never before. So I really believe we're here to live an embodied sensual life. Why have we got all this? We're second only to the universe itself in complexity. We're extremely complex, intelligent beings with millions of years of evolution behind us. I make a case for enjoying being a human and a sensual body being. There we go.
Aho to that.
Aho.
That's beautiful. What came to my mind just as you were speaking at the end there, when you were saying this, what you're describing, this orientation is actually deeply spiritual. It's there's a beautiful phrase by this spiritual teacher called Adi Dar, who I think I've shared some things with you. He's a profoundly awakened man, and his transmission and his teaching is what he used to call it, the enlightenment of the whole body. And so he was always criticizing this kind of more ascetic, up and out spirituality, which often leads to statements like, I am not the body. I am consciousness itself, and who I truly am is beyond the mind and the body. And of course there's a dimension in which that's true, because we are more than that, more than this.
Yeah.
But he would always be pointing to the fact that as long as if we believe that the truth is within, you know, this is a phrase you often hear, the truth is within, or who we truly are as spirit is within. There's an inherent dissociation to a subtle or gross degree of the mind, the body, and the world, all of this, as you say. And so he has this beautiful phrase, which is, so instead of I am not the body, it's I am the body is love.
I am the body is love.
I am the body is love. So he would say, usually when, for people who are in a, let's call it the normal unenlightened condition, the sense is that I is in here somewhere. So the I is somehow some subjective ghost in the body mind machine. I'm in here. And then you get this often this spiritual pronouncement, no, I'm not the body, I'm not any of this. But because the way you were describing how through these practices and this magnification of sensation and awareness together, as you were saying, and then when you were saying, then you become magnified to, you know, just the simple joy of the smell of the grass or the taste of a cup of tea. It's one of my favorites. It's because who you are as an I, as a being, is the body, is not somebody inside the body who's enjoying this or that.
Yeah.
So it's not some, you know, I in here who is making love, for example, or enjoying a cup of tea sitting by the ocean. I am the body. I am all of this sensation. There is no separation between me or I and this sensation, this whatever's arising. And so then there's more of a progressive radiance, a progressive surrender into the radiance of being, of life, of joy, of just the simple joy of being embodied and being here. And as you said, you know, why do we have all of this? You know, it's you know, and I feel so much in the Western culture. It's interesting, if you go to the East, I remember particularly when I was in Thailand, for example, some Southeast Asian countries, you constantly see people massaging each other, or the mothers massaging the children, you know, just sitting on the bus or whatever, and much more just ease around this sense of touch and tactileness. And also men, you know, men holding hands, you know, men being much more, we could say, physically affectionate and expressive, but you know, from the West, we see that, and we tend to read it as some kind of eros going on between men. But no, they're just comfortable with this dynamic of just a natural intimacy of giving and receiving. So in the West, we tend to be so locked in a kind of mentalized universe, you know, we're kind of living up here. So I really think all these practices you're bringing, and the way you just these simple exercises like the ones with the hands, for example, I think it's such a beautiful complement and magnification of meditation. Which is really about, you know, what is spirituality about? It's that yearning to become intimate, first of all, with oneself, and then ultimately with everything, which we could call God or consciousness or whatever. We're all longing for that intimacy with everything that arises, such that we don't experience ourselves as being separate from it.
Exactly. To become intimately animated and immersed and at one with the mystery, whilst not needing to understand it, but to to build the inner resource to feel safe in the unknown, as there are beautiful books on this. But what are the practices to support us to, because it's not a journey of going anywhere, like you said, it's not a ghost in the machine that's separate from what's outside of us. And Philip Shepherd, my friend and the author of Radical Wholeness, said we come into being through relationship. We relate to the I body external, and therefore come into being in this life. And without those elements, there's not the same richness of life experience at all. We become quite disoriented if we go into a flotation tank where we're weightless and there's no light and our sensation is limited. We can get very disoriented quite quickly. They've done studies on that. So that's when we're shrinking away from that continuum that you spoke about inner awareness, felt sense, and relationship to the world around us. I'd like to say welcome to Adrienne, who's joined us. We've been going for about
hi, Adrienne.
an hour.
Hi, I'm so sorry I'm late again. It's just, whatever, I'm late, but here I am. Nice to see you.
No problem.
Thanks for coming.
Good to
We've
see you.
recorded it, so you can catch up on what you've missed. We've been talking about consent and practices to bring and support clarity of agreements within relationships, and how those agreements and clarity can help us really surrender to the mental chatter that often accompanies vulnerability and intimacy and honesty, and how we can greater surrender into presence and qualities like grace, reverence, gratitude, heart opening, generosity, through some simple practices that we were going to cover on the retreat around working with the hands, for example, when the touch is for the other and when the touch is for me. And when I realize that someone's touching me, but it's for them, then I can be touched. I didn't say this, but I can feel touched that my willingness to allow their touch, you can be humbled by the grace and reverence with which probably your partner, I've seen this hundreds of times, will touch with such care. But actually, if we're trying to get information in a touch exchange with a friend or with a partner in the workshop, we started with a meditation of waking up the hands and touching an object. And in order to get the most information, usually most people find that slowing down by half, slowing down again by half. And in scientific terms, they've measured the free nerve endings and nerve cells within the fascia is designed to register really slow touch. It's something like 4 seconds per 2 inches or something. There's a very specific speed of touch which we can get most out of that sensation, and it's slow and gentle, not hard and fast. So the body registers and can feel way more when we slow down, and how this can support us in many different ways, and getting clear around the agreements of who's it for, who's the touch for. I could touch Pete's hands and it be for me meditating on an exploration of exploring his hands, or I might be giving Pete a hand massage and it might look exactly the same, but the agreement changes everything. The agreement says that this is for Pete. And then if he's not liking it, he can say, Julian, can you go a bit deeper or a bit lighter? And he can feel permission and know that it's really for him. So we went into a bit more detail around those practices. Yeah. JP or Emma, do you have any shares or questions or anything from hearing this stuff?
Wow, there's so much to say. And as you were explaining all about the touch, I could see how different it is. And I've been experiencing more and more this consent and slowing down and feeling things. And it really feels like becoming a kid, as exploring through the curiousness that kids have.
Mm,
And I've started to experience this through food. As before I give a bite to something, I look, I smell it, and then I savor it slowly. And it's a whole different experience. And it's not about just putting food inside, it's about feeling everything, feeling the food and feeling the body being nourished by it.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
yeah, and it completely changes, because what I am seeing more and more is that my experience outside, it also changes.
Yeah.
Because I'm much more present. I'm present with the food, I'm present with my object, or I am present with a friend, a partner, whoever. And yeah, the way you expressed it, it brought so much simplicity. And this simplicity is something that I've been noticing that I am longing for in my life, to simplify things. And as Pete was expressing, what Adidas said, this reminded me of, I don't remember, I think it was a monk or a priest that said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but spiritual beings having a human experience. And as I was saying before you started the recording, as I was feeling the massage that I received today, it was completely different, because it was like I was witnessing my body receiving the massage. I was witnessing my body feeling the pain of the massage and of everything that I carry. I have a tendency to carry everything on my shoulders, and then my back and my neck, they got all of this pain. But by relaxing in that moment and just really being present, it really transformed my experience of being a receiver of that massage. So I don't know, I feel it was really on point with my experience that I had today and what opened up for me. So I'm really grateful for this subject. And there was something else that I believe you were just saying, Julian, that reminded me of matter is spirit moving slowly enough to be seen. When you were talking about the touch, when you slow down, it really brought me this phrase, and it's really beautiful what you just shared today. Thank you for it. You're muted.
You're muted.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Thank you, João. Yeah, I'm so glad I had a sleep. I wouldn't have been able to articulate that if I hadn't had an hour's sleep. And when Pete was like, what should we talk about tonight? I felt containers, boundary, and the ability to surrender into presence. Because if we're held back, if something's holding us back from being fully present, we're not fully embodied. And in Portuguese and Italian, it's incarnato, is like to incarnate into the body. And one of my bodywork teachers said, most human beings are not fully incarnated. And
No.
if you look at anthroposophical medicine and Rudolf Steiner, he spoke about different ages of neurodevelopment and human incarnation, and that children start to paint pictures of the horizon of the sky meeting the ground at a developmental age of about 7 to 9. And that's when the soul is descending on a more embodied layer and level of human existence. But there are many interruptions to that in our modern, all ages there's been challenges, but now we have modern distracting screens and stress for money, and parents maybe that are less present than they would like to be in bringing up children. So but you also said something, JP, there about I would just like to share that when I learned these things, I became better at receiving massage. So I went to a psychic reading when I was 17. She said, you'll be in hands-on healing and massage. And I thought, no, I won't. No, 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 no. I want to be a photographer. And I've become both. I do photography and film, and I also teach bodywork, massage, and embodiment, which for me is how do we support the human to become fully present, joyful, and healthy and happy in the body. And the more humans that feel that, more people, the more harmony for me there'll be on the planet. So I was also saying to Pete, I'm not watching a lot of news at the moment. I'm really passionately sharing this work, traveling around the world, teaching these kind of things, because I see it transform people's lives. And I think the more I'm here to do that. So I could get caught up in politics. I could argue this, that, and the other, but I'm plugging my time into doing this. And I see the change it brings to people is life-changing. And you mentioned about perception of time. I think you said something about noticing when we slow down. One of my teachers shared a workshop on the 3 dimensions of time, and maybe we could explore it on the workshop. We have linear time. We can start a digital stopwatch and see it counting. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and then we know that a clock goes round, and the seasons are cyclical, and our circadian rhythm is cyclical, and our cerebrospinal fluid has a rhythm of moving up and down the spine, and the menstrual cycle, and men have a cycle, a hormonal cycle, and the seasons of the year come back round. There's a cyclical nature of time, hours in the day, months in the year, weather patterns, hormones, all these good things of nature. And then, so we have an experience. Usually in our day, we have to do something at a certain time, and we see time counting down towards that thing. This is a common occurrence every day. We see the cyclical time round, and it's dinner time again, and the body's hungry, and we see that, and it's getting dark, and we see, oh, now it's time to go to bed. So we also experience cyclical time. And then magically, we experience timelessness, this 3rd dimension of time, when we're asleep. And we might wake up like I did. I just went to sleep. I went so deep in that hour, so grateful, had no idea of time. And when I woke up, I didn't really know where I was. I've been traveling to Ireland. I've been on different hotel rooms, and I was like, oh, what have I got to do now? Oh, it's with Pete. Oh yeah, we're doing the Shiva Shakti temple talks. Oh, I feel deeply rested, but I feel good. So I experienced timelessness. My being was in an experience of timelessness, and I had reference to it when I came back into waking everyday consciousness of linear and cyclical time. And I was able to reference because I didn't know the passage of time, what had happened. So we have these 3 experiences every day, and there's ways to support the body back into the rhythms of cyclical time, and to take away the references of clocks and ticking on the wall, and to do certain practices and go into trance state or altered states of perception, which can be conducive to feeling unity and oneness and emerging and a melting. That was part of the body poem of the feeling up the object. Someone said melting. And so we can, within a few hours of a retreat or a workshop, remind ourselves, orient to these different dimensions of time, and then be freer from them and make conscious choices about, well, for this period of time where I go to the lake and have a swim with Pete, maybe we set an alarm because we've got to be back, but let's put that somewhere where we can hear it, but not worry about time, and be really present to this swimming, and like, whoa, just like merge with the nature elements and just really nourish ourselves with full presence and not be worried about the time. Whereas if we didn't set the alarm and we're like, oh, we're all wet, and we have to keep going and checking the time, and that we're bringing ourselves back into linear time, and we're spoiling our immersion literally in the water and our experience together as friends. So thanks for also reminding me. Oh yeah, and so to speed up as adults, someone said about childlikeness, and the child has no longer got the meaning and context piece that this is a dinga bell thing to the bowl. You know, so the child's like, ooh, and like everything's new. But as an adult, we go, oh, this is a dingery thing. So we speed up by naming everything and reducing everything. And that speeds up our perception of time. And the childlike innocence, the enlightened master that's become more childlike, has learned how to disconnect from the sped up linear naming, segregation and separation of the 1,000 things, or the million manifest
Which is
things.
the faculty, which is the mind.
Yeah.
The mind names the 10,000 things.
That's it. And that speeds up your sense of the passage of your life. You know, someone said, as Emma at the beginning, life is so short. When I moved to Portugal in 2012, my desire was to slow my life down. You know, here's a more southern country, people are more chilled, the weather's beautiful. But my experience of the passage of time did not slow down. In fact, it seemed to speed up. But in these practices of slowing down and the craniosacral touch, the feel, follow touch, we go into timelessness in ourselves and with our client. And I'm 41. I want to spend as much of the rest of my life in that kind of presence where there's no time. That's what life has pointed me at, to be the answer to this longing for timeless presence and union, service. You know, when we align to serving life, then for me, there's no fear, there's no uncertainty, there's clarity, there's easefulness and beauty. So those are some of the qualities which we invite. They're not goals for the retreat and for these sessions, but wouldn't it be lovely if we could experience more of those things in life? And I believe,
well, I think
fully
it's
able.
beautiful, Julian. I think that's another way of describing what everybody in their heart of hearts is longing for.
Yeah.
Is to drop into this timelessness.
Yeah.
You know, just as you were speaking, I looked up at my wall here, and I have this post-it note of a phrase, some phrases. I can't remember where I came across this, or if I wrote it myself. And it's love fiercely, travel far, and learn to be eternal. And so just as you described, because the truth is that timelessness is always the case.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That we're always aware, even in deep sleep. It's just in deep sleep everything disappears.
Yeah. And the body, the body dwells in the subconscious. The body is the subconscious mind. So the body is in timelessness, but it's also in the present moment always. So if you reawaken the body to the beauty and power of the present moment, and you acknowledge that the body knows past, present, and future through the mind, these practices really are supporting liberation from those binding other elements of perceived passage of time. And in those moments that we can build more and more into our life, we can feel more and more at one with timelessness by waking up and honoring our body being. Definitely, that what you framed there definitely highlights that. And Bruce Lee's quote, the key to immortality is to first live a life worth remembering.
That's a good.
Yeah, I used to put it at the bottom of my emails and stuff. It's probably a bit pretentious, but I loved it. I was like, yeah, you know, whatever the truth is about life and the mystery of life and death, let's first live a life worth remembering, because it'll be full of quality moments, connection, immersion into the whatever you put on your post-it note, the eternal.
Learn to be eternal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just say one final reflection on this. When you were describing, when Emma was saying how you were describing earlier, Emma, about how the rapidity of life just flowing through, you know, and it's my experience as I get older that increases. Actually, Anna and I were often saying these days, you know, even the days, the cyclical nature of the day, it seems to go faster. And we've been talking recently about how we've been together for 2.5 years this Valentine's, and there's this ever new freshness. You know, we know each other in all kinds of ways and dimensions more than we did then, but there's this ever new freshness, and that has to do with our our receptivity to this eternal dimension, the I call it wide open wonder, which I love that line from the Bible when Jesus apparently said, if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to become like little children. That's what he was pointing to. And yeah, there's that sense of so this is my experience of this paradox of time, is the more you come to rest in this this eternity, this presence, paradoxically everything seems to speed up, because you're not holding on to stuff, you're just letting everything flow through. But then paradoxically, everything seems to slow down, as I can see how these exercises really facilitate that, because you're so much more with now and what's happening now, be that a sensation or having a cup of tea with a friend or whatever. It's time is really elastic.
It is, definitely.
And I like this what you brought about these three dimensions of it, the linearity, the cyclical, and the eternal. That could be a good sort of frame to go into, to frame the experience of being on retreat together.
Yeah, I think we should use it on the retreat for the silent days and stuff. And Emma's going to be on the retreat.
Great you're coming.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And the more so I have it with clients and using body poem that they can experience both. The passage of time was fast. We covered so much. I sometimes do 3-hour sessions and they're like, oh my God, we covered loads. So it seemed to go fast and slow at the same time because we were so present. It seems like we spent a whole day, but we know in linear time it was only 3 hours. So when you process, when you come out, there's a saying, I don't know who said this, but being in time with someone is presence. It's reciprocal, co-regulated presence. That is so precious. Not many people arrive. My colleague Katie Sara, who invented the combination of elements that is body poem. I don't know where she got this from, or whether I think she got it from neuroscience, that when you're in time with someone, then your physiology, we're in time now. We're coming to the end. So our nervous system, mine, I'll speak for myself, is pulling me out of being in time with you all and back into my family and the rest of my evening. And as we come out of a session, as we're coming out of that co-regulated in time with each other, the bodies are in time together. And in that in timeness, as we come out on a nervous system level and we zoom out and we come a bit more into our head and we get some perspective, which we spoke in other calls, you could say is more the masculine pole, but it's just names. It's this part. And then the felt sense of the harmony of all is the feminine pole in the body, belly, pelvis. As I come out, I realize, because I'm the space holder in my sessions as the practitioner, I realize, okay, we're coming towards the end. The client's got to have some integration installation time. So I'm doing this as the practitioner, and I'm probably, with our mirror neurons, bringing the client back out of this in timeness. And that's when they realize, 3 hours has passed. And they reflect and they go, gosh, but we did so much. So then the perception is time went fast, but then it feels like it was a whole day. So I love that time is elastic and our perception. And tonight we've talked about pain and pleasure being very contextual with meaning, awareness, and sensation. And the same true of the passage of time. And children experience their summer holidays being so long. We can all remember those summer holidays felt like years. It was amazing. And the passage of time is definitely, in my experience, and I've heard from scientists, sped up by the fact that we name and have reasons for everything. And because we rationalize all that, we jump to conclusions. We don't take in, we're not fully present. I come to my desk, I see the microphone, I see the speakers, the laptop, it was the same as it was yesterday. I don't take in all this detail and start feeling up my desk and the tripod and, but a child would, and they'd be like, ooh, and they'd open up a whole universe of, they'd want to touch everything on my desk. Whereas I come, sit down, turn the thing on, Zoom, Pete, Bampton, here we go. And that's a totally different experience than the child who would be like, feel probably that you know, in my reality, it took about half an hour to get into the Zoom. Yeah. So been a joy, Pete and Emma and
great.
Pete and Adrienne joining us. And
If I
we'll
may, a very
next
quick thing, if I
JP.
may, a very quick
say,
thing,
say.
if I may. I'm gonna join the retreat. I don't know if Pete told you, but I will. I will
Cool.
join the retreat.
Cool.
Oh, fantastic, JP.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, great. Yeah, we've had some more signups today. Today's been a sign-up day.
Oh, we had some more. Good. We've got just a few more days of the early bird
Yeah.
discount
Tell
until
people, come into
Saturday.
timelessness. Join us in the eternal. We promise not to hurt you. Yeah. Really enjoyed tonight. And next week I'm in the Algarve, Pete. So I can log in just before
All right.
and go live, but I'll just
We'll
stop.
figure it out.